Dara O'Brien to
Corla, and I'd like to thank colleagues across the House who have contributed to this debate, and I'll deal with some of the queries that Jan O'Sullivan had, Deputy Jan O'Sullivan from the Labour Party. Although, firstly, if I would say, and this doesn't refer to your contribution, Minister, which was kind of a history lesson of what the local property tax is and what the review is going to be, and we know that, and that's fine. What I've asked government to do was, this is a genuine attempt to actually right some wrongs. I was actually very taken aback by the contribution made by Minister Canny, not only the fiscal gymnastics that he engaged in there, talking about things such as the principle of horizontal equity and then the principle of vertical equity. I've never heard him speak in such a manner previously to this, and they're new phrases, I have to say, that I've learned this evening, so I suppose every day is a school day. But what I'm actually trying to do is actually trying to right a wrong and make the LPT a little bit fairer. And that's really what we're about. My colleagues have mentioned here this evening there are thousands of homeowners in my own constituency in Dublin Fingal who aren't living in big mansions and big gated communities. I'm talking about your teachers, your guards, your nurses, living in apartments. Many of them are paid at the top of the market, who are paying €2,500 in management fees. And yes, a lot of those fees, and I would contest absolutely the response that, or the contribution that this relates to the horizontal equity test, apparently, that Minister Kennedy was teaching us about earlier on today. And so the contention that people paying management fees are somehow paying on the double does not stand up to equity, or to scrutiny, should I say. I think if you ask anyone who is actually paying LPT in full, and particularly in areas where property prices have risen and they're paying a decent amount of net income, by the way, and an LPT, a property tax that does not take into account people's income, nor do management fees, I might add, for things like wastewater treatment, for things like parks within their estate, open spaces. I'm not talking about shared landings or anything like it. They are actually effectively, for the roads that they use, they're paying for through their LPT. Okay? And management companies are in a very difficult position right now. There's an overall issue. Jan O'Sullivan mentioned things that Labour would do. I've published 3 bills on this. I wasn't Minister for Housing in the department. There are things that need to actually be done to rectify it. But one is about fairness, and that's all this is. Now, when the Minister also in the government's response, by the way, this response was given after he asks us to park our bill for 6 months and say, can we park the bill, and basically we'll have a look at this in more detail and we'll cost it properly and we'll go into more detail on it. And I was actually quite open to that initially before Minister Canny came up and gave what is a very condescending and dismissive and trite and petty response on behalf of government. And that's not what Minister Canny, to be fair, is like. But that's the official government response. And that's how they treat opposition legislation. And I think it's frankly disgraceful, because talk to thousands of people across the country, 200,000 homeowners, about 500,000 people, and I'm talking about the owner-occupiers, not the landlords, not the investors, and I do take your point, Deputy O'Sullivan, that's something that we would be far more specific about at committee stage. They'll tell you that this is an issue. I know it is an issue. But the government response here this evening, not your own, Minister Kine, but the government response in response to this bill, of what is an attempt, by the way, from an opposition party that does not have the resources of revenue to cost all our proposals. Another criticism that was made. Of course it's an approximation. That's what it is, and we've given it as best as we can. That's something that would be done at committee stage. So, on foot of the Minister's response here today, I would find it absolutely impossible for me or my party to accept the request from government to delay this bill for 6 months to allow for more detailed consideration. I think that should be done at the Housing Committee. The Deputy O'Sullivan is in tomorrow at the Housing Committee with one of her bills. Let's do that through the committee, because I won't trust the government to do this within 6 months. And your colleagues in Fine Gael and others, when they are out and about over the next few months, talk to people mainly in the urban areas. Yes, mainly in the urban areas. Ask them, is this an issue, if they're paying £2,500 a year in management fees. Now, it is an issue when they're paying full LPT, and all this is a recognition, a maximum of €300. And by the way, that would be in a minute number of cases. Minute. We're looking at an average reduction of about €86. But what I would say to you is this is an acknowledgement that there are managed areas and managed estates and apartment blocks that are providing the services themselves that for other areas that the local authorities will be doing so. Now, I think Deputy O'Sullivan raised a very fair point when she asked, well, would this be a way of actually ensuring that some estates that I don't believe should be private estates would remain private and not go into the council? No, and that would not be our desire at all. I would like to see more estates taken in charge, and deal in my own area in Fingal. They're moving to take some estates that can be in charge. But don't forget, why are these private estates? Because the original planning permission that were given, they were conditioned by the local authorities that they would be managed estates, and that's what it was. And we need to move and look at ones that can be brought back in under the local authorities and the taking in charge of them. So this is one measure. It's one measure to recognise the fact that many, many families out there, thousands of them, actually need a break on something like these. These are the people who, to quote your own Taoiseach, get up early in the morning apparently. But these are the working families that a lot of them have paid, bought their homes and their apartments at the top of the boom, who are actually paying management fees. And by the way, when you mention your review of the LPT, who are still awaiting to see what government are going to do with the local property tax. Like right now, if nothing is done, we're going to see a doubling of local property tax across this country. And I cannot for the life of me understand as to what the continued delay from government in publishing the review is. I have a fair idea, though, what I think it might be. It's just down to pure politics. And it's down to politics because you guys want to produce it in April or May in advance of the local elections, and you want to do what all of us don't want, or what all of us want is that there will be no increase in local property tax. And Fianna Fáil's position is there should be no individual increase in local property tax. Why not produce it now? What's the delay? And that's what I would say. I would have thought in your response, with all due respect to you, Minister Kine, that you would have come in and given us some indication as to when that would be. But we don't know. And instead we have people in the Department of Finance and in Revenue writing a script for Minister Canny that is, actually doesn't even really warrant any other comment. If opposition bring forward bills with limited resources that we have, I think at the very least government should show some respect for the spirit of the legislation. I agree there are changes that are needed in it, and I hope to work with colleagues. I welcome Sinn Féin's support for this bill. I welcome the independent group, the Rural Independents' support for this group and others, and I hope that I will have Labour's support for this bill, that we can move it into committee and deal with some of the very valid questions that Deputy O'Sullivan have, that we can deal with and make more specific. So thank you.